Let's go to Evan Bayh right now. Senator Evan Bayh from Indiana is with us from Washington. Senator Bayh, you listened in, obviously, to Valerie Jarrett. What's your feeling? Obviously, people in Indiana, if this military recruiting issue comes up, will be concerned in Middle America. Were you convinced by what you heard at the White House today?
Well, my first reaction, Joe, is that Valerie Jarrett is one effective advocate.
Yes,
she's pretty tenacious and pretty thoughtful, so I thought she did a good job. Look, this is something that needs to be explored in the hearings. And, you know, where I'm from, most people would think Harvard's hostility to the ROTC recruiting on campus is just, wrong. The question is whether she has some deep-seated hostility toward the military, and as Valerie was laying out, clearly she does not.
Hey, Pat Buchanan, do you have a question for Senator Bayh?
Well, sure. I might take it out to Indiana, if I could, Senator Bayh. Dan Coates won that nomination for the Republicans. Is that a pretty certain Republican pickup there? And do you have any regrets over the fact that you stood down now?
No, Pat, on my own decision, I don't. With regard to the race in Indiana, I think it's going to be a very competitive race. This looks to be a more Republican year for a number of reasons. Our state is a more conservative state. That will tend to favor the former senator. But we've got a very effective candidate. He's a former county sheriff. And you send me more county sheriffs in Washington, D.C., Congress will be a better place. So I think that this is going to be a competitive race down to the wire, and there are some things that favor one and some things that favor the other.
Elena Kagan had written earlier that she thought that the nomination process for Supreme Court justices in the U.S. Senate was vapid. Do you agree with that assessment?
Absolutely, Joe. You get these very erudite people coming before Congress saying as little as possible in very intelligent-sounding phrases. It's really kind of a sad kabuki theater, but that's what it's devolved into.
Yeah. Willie?
Go ahead, Andrew. I actually wanted to move the conversation, if I could, for half a second to financial reform.
Sure.
Because the senator's on the banking committee, and so the one question I'm curious about is...
By the way, Andrew, are you now 30 years old? Is that right?
Thank you for that. You got the invitation to the bar mitzvah. So, the question I had for you, Senator, was really actually... where the Senate bill is, and specifically the derivatives piece. We keep reading about this derivatives piece and the controversy around it, and I was hoping you could comment on that.
Well, we're going to eventually get a bill, Andrew. As you know, we can't afford to have a repetition of the financial crisis that brought our economy to its knees, but we need to make sure we take our time to get it right. We need to do something in the derivatives area. I personally feel, as Paul Volcker and Tim Geithner and others feel, that forcing these firms to completely divest themselves of this activity is the wrong thing to do. It would run the risk of making the system more opaque, less transparent, driving some of this activity offshore so we'd have fewer jobs and less tax revenue. So I hope we can find some happy medium ground where we have the activity through exchanges, through clearinghouses, which, as you know, makes it more stable, but don't require them to divest themselves of this activity in its entirety. That might actually be counterproductive.
And where does that put you, though, with some of your other Democratic colleagues who have been on the other side of this, really pushing, I think, much farther on this?
As you know, and as Pat and Joe would attest, it's not infrequent that I find myself with some differences with the far left of my party, but, that's part of being independent in Washington. I'm comfortable with that. We need a practical middle ground, not the far right, not the far left, what will work for the American people.
Very reasonable view.
Evan Bayh is always good. I wish you were running again, brother. We could use you in the Senate and your viewpoints.
Well, Harold, I could say the same for you, but, to get back to Pat's question, I'm going to continue to help my country, just in a different capacity, perhaps even more effectively than in Congress today.
All right, Evan, thank you so much. Hey, and Pat Buchanan, thank you so much for being with us. You got to give Valerie an A+, don't you, for being on message?
She's persistent. She's very good, Joe. Very good.